The night had an eerie stillness, the kind that only a biting winter could bring. The stars were hidden behind a thick veil of clouds, and the moon cast a feeble glow over the snow-covered landscape. In the small, isolated mountain town, everyone was indoors, seeking refuge from the relentless cold. Sarah stumbled through the snow, clutching her baby to her chest. Her breaths came in ragged gasps, each one a visible puff of mist in the frigid air. Her clothes were torn and tattered, offering little protection against the cold that seemed to seep into her very bones. Desperation drove her forward, her eyes scanning the horizon for the familiar sight of her brother's home. When she finally saw it, a tiny cabin nestled among towering pines, a sob of relief escaped her lips. "Jonah," she cried, her voice barely more than a whisper, carried away by the wind. The door swung open almost immediately, and Jonah, a tall, broad-shouldered man with a rugged face and kind eyes, stood silhouetted against the warm glow of the fire inside. His expression shifted from confusion to shock as he took in Sarah's disheveled appearance. Without a word, he rushed forward, his strong arms wrapping around her and guiding her inside. "Help me, Jonah," Sarah pleaded, her voice cracking. Jonah closed the door behind them and quickly set to work, stoking the fire and wrapping Sarah and the baby in warm blankets. He knelt beside her, his eyes searching hers for answers. "Sarah, who did this to you?" he asked, his voice trembling with barely suppressed rage. Sarah's eyes filled with tears as she looked at her brother. She was a 27-year-old homemaker, once vibrant and full of life, now reduced to a shadow of her former self. Her young son, cradled in her arms, slept soundly, blissfully unaware of the turmoil around him. "It's Alex and his mother, Miranda," Sarah whispered, her voice filled with pain. They tried to hurt me, Jonah. I had to leave." Jonah's jaw clenched, and he looked ready to storm out of the cabin and confront Alex right then and there. But he took a deep breath, his eyes softening as he looked at Sarah. "You're safe now," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "You're with me, and no one is going to hurt you ever again." As Sarah recounted the horrors she had endured, Jonah listened, his fists clenching and unclenching at his sides. Alex, once kind and loving, had turned into someone she barely recognized, a transformation driven by his mother, Miranda. She had tormented Sarah, both physically and emotionally, pushing her to the brink. The night Sarah fled, Miranda had tried to push her down the stairs. With no choice but to run, Sarah had left behind the life she once knew. Jonah's gentle voice and the warmth of his home brought a wave of relief to Sarah. "We'll get through this together," he vowed, his eyes filled with determination. For the first time in months, Sarah felt a glimmer of hope. In the days that followed, Jonah and Sarah worked to rebuild their lives. Jonah's home, though small, was a sanctuary. The warmth of the fire, the smell of fresh bread baking, and the sound of the wind whistling through the trees created a sense of peace that Sarah had almost forgotten existed. But beneath the surface, the tension was palpable. One evening, as they sat by the fire, Sarah looked up at Jonah, her eyes filled with gratitude and fear. "What if they come looking for us?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Jonah reached out, taking her hand in his. "Let them try," he said, his voice steady. "I'll protect you, Sarah. No one is going to take you away from here." "But what about Alex? He has connections, power." Sarah's voice trailed off, her eyes downcast. Jonah's grip on her hand tightened. "He may have power, but we have something stronger. We have the truth, and we have each other." Sarah nodded, taking comfort in her brother's words. But the fear lingered, a dark shadow that refused to be dispelled. Meanwhile, in a large, imposing mansion on the outskirts of the town, Alex paced the floor, his face a mask of anger and frustration. Miranda, his mother, sat in an ornate armchair, her expression cold and calculating. "She'll come back," Miranda said, her voice icy. "She has nowhere else to go." Alex stopped pacing, his eyes narrowing. "And if she doesn't?" Then we'll find her, Miranda replied, her lips curling into a cruel smile. No one defies us and gets away with it. Back in Jonah's cabin, Sarah found herself haunted by nightmares, reliving the terror of her last night in Alex's home. She would wake up in a cold sweat, her heart pounding, and Jonah would be there, offering comfort and reassurance. "You're safe now, Sarah," he would say, his voice soothing. "No one is going to hurt you." But as the days turned into weeks, Sarah knew that their peace was fragile. Alex and Miranda were not the type to give up easily, and so, with Jonah's help, she began to prepare. They fortified the cabin, made plans for escape routes, and kept a constant watch. One night, as they sat by the fire, Jonah turned to Sarah, his expression serious. "We need to find out what they're planning," he said. "We can't just wait for them to come to us." Sarah nodded, a sense of resolve filling her. "I know someone who might be able to help," she said. "An old friend, someone who still works at the hospital. They might know something." Jonah's eyes lit up with hope. "Then we need to contact them. The more we know, the better we can protect ourselves." As Sarah and Jonah prepared to delve into the unknown, the suspense and tension grew. The sense of urgency was palpable, and every shadow seemed to hold a new threat. But with each step they took, they grew stronger, more determined to uncover the secrets that had driven them to this point. In the darkness of the winter night, surrounded by the towering pines and the cold, Sarah and Jonah found a flicker of hope. And they held onto it, knowing that the path ahead would be fraught with danger, but also with the possibility of salvation. The house loomed before Sarah and Jonah like a grim reminder of a past they had desperately tried to escape. The once familiar surroundings now seemed foreign and menacing. The sky was a dull gray, casting a pallor over the large, imposing structure of Sarah's in-laws' home. Its grandeur, a symbol of Alex's and Miranda's wealth, now felt oppressive. The iciness of the day seeped through the walls, mirroring the cold atmosphere that awaited them inside. Jonah's grip on Sarah's hand tightened as they approached the door. Despite the warmth of his presence, a deep unease settled over them. Sarah's heart pounded with every step, each thud echoing the dread she felt at the prospect of facing her tormentors again. The door creaked open, and Alex stood in the threshold, his face a mask of controlled disdain. His cold gaze swept over Sarah and Jonah, his posture rigid. "You finally returned," he said, his voice laced with an icy edge. Sarah flinched at the sight of her estranged husband, but Jonah's presence beside her offered a small measure of courage. Jonah stepped forward, his expression a mix of steely determination and restrained anger. "My sister is distressed. We're here to collect her things." Alex's eyes narrowed, and he looked Jonah up and down with barely concealed contempt. "And you think you can just waltz in here and take what you want? You're just a potter, aren't you? How do you expect to take care of her?" Jonah's face flushed, the tension in his jaw evident as he clenched his fists at his sides. "We're not here to argue. Just let us get her things," he said through gritted teeth. Miranda, who had been silently observing from the shadows of the grand hallway, stepped forward with a sneer. Her presence, as always, carried a chilling aura. "And what's this? Your noble protector. I wonder how long he'll last before he realizes how futile this all is." Jonah's eyes flashed with barely contained fury, but he kept his voice steady. "I'm here for my sister Miranda. We'll be gone as soon as we have what we came for." Miranda's lips curled into a disdainful smile. "Fine. Follow me. I'm sure you'll be thrilled with the state of her belongings." The atmosphere was thick with tension as Miranda led them through the sprawling mansion. The opulent decor contrasted starkly with the grim purpose of their visit. The walls, adorned with expensive paintings and intricate moldings, seemed to close in on them, amplifying the sense of discomfort. Finally, Miranda stopped in front of a door that led to a cramped storage room. The door creaked open to reveal a small, dimly lit space. The room was filled with cardboard boxes and warm furniture. The contrast between the lavish surroundings of the house and the meager possessions that had been Sarah's was stark and jarring. Sarah's eyes watered as she took in the sight. Her few belongings, which included some faded clothes and tattered family photos, were piled haphazardly. Jonah's anger flared as he saw the state of Sarah's things. He stepped forward, his voice a low rumble of fury. "Is this how you treated my sister? You've reduced her life to this." Miranda's response was a dismissive laugh, a sound that grated on Jonah's nerves. She should be grateful to have a room at all. She was lucky we allowed her any space here. Sarah's face flushed with a mix of humiliation and anger, but Jonah's firm presence beside her helped her stay composed. Jonah began to gather the boxes and belongings, his movements deliberate and controlled, despite the rage simmering beneath the surface. "Let's hurry," Jonah said, his voice strained. "We need to get out of here." As they collected Sarah's belongings, the weight of the past weeks hung heavily in the air. Each item they packed seemed to carry the weight of Sarah's suffering and the uncertainty of what lay ahead. Jonah's determination to protect his sister was palpable, and Sarah found a renewed strength in his presence. The process was swift, Jonah's anger and Sarah's fear propelling them forward. When they finally stepped out of the mansion, the cold air outside felt like a welcome reprieve from the stifling tension within. Jonah carefully loaded the boxes into the car, his movements precise and efficient. As they drove away from the mansion, Sarah looked back, her heart heavy with the knowledge that the battle was far from over. The house, with its cold grandeur, receded into the distance, but the memories and the sense of looming danger remained vivid. Jonah glanced at Sarah, his expression a mix of concern and resolve. "We've got what we came for. Now, we need to figure out our next move." Sarah nodded, her eyes reflecting a mix of relief and apprehension. "I know someone who might be able to help us. An old friend who still works at the hospital. They might know something about Alex and Miranda's plans." Jonah's eyes lit up with a glimmer of hope. "That's a good idea. The more we know, the better we can protect ourselves." The road stretched out before them, a symbol of the uncertainty and challenges that lay ahead. The sense of urgency was palpable, and the shadows of the past continued to loom large. Yet, with each mile they put between themselves and the mansion, Sarah felt a flicker of hope. As they drove through the bleak winter landscape, the landscape a blur of grey and white, Sarah and Jonah knew that the journey ahead would be fraught with danger and revelations. But with Jonah's unwavering support and the determination to uncover the truth, they faced the future with a cautious optimism, ready to confront the secrets that had driven them to this point. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the landscape as Sarah and Jonah made their way back to the house that had once been Sarah's prison. The air was crisp, the evening chill a stark reminder of the battle they were about to face. After a week of preparation and planning, they were ready to confront Sarah's in-laws, armed not just with resolve, but with tangible evidence and a clear plan of action. Back at her grandparents' house, the atmosphere had been one of quiet determination. Jonah, recently having passed the bar exam, had spent countless hours preparing the legal documents and strategizing their approach. Sarah, though still haunted by her past experiences, found strength in the unwavering support of her brother. The room they sat in was filled with a mix of old-fashioned charm and practical functionality, a haven of normalcy that felt worlds apart from the opulent but oppressive mansion they were about to enter. As Sarah clutched the envelope containing the divorce papers, her heart raced. The importance of this moment was almost too great to bear. Jonah's hand rested reassuringly on her shoulder, his presence a steady anchor in the storm of her emotions. The thought of confronting Alex and Miranda again, of facing the very people who had made her life a living nightmare, was daunting. But she knew she couldn't keep running forever. It was time to fight for her son's future and reclaim her life. The mansion loomed before them once again, its grandeur a stark contrast to the turmoil within. Jonah and Sarah walked up the steps with a newfound sense of purpose, each step echoing with the weight of their determination. They were greeted by a tense silence as Alex opened the door, his face darkening as he saw them. "You've come back," Alex said, his voice a low, menacing growl. "What do you want now?" Sarah took a deep breath, forcing herself to remain calm despite the churn of emotions inside her. She stepped forward, her voice steady as she spoke. "I'm here to finalize the divorce, Alex." His eyes widened in disbelief, and then anger took over. "You think you can just leave? You think you can walk away from everything and expect nothing in return? You'll get nothing from me." Jonah, standing beside Sarah, stepped forward with a commanding presence. "Sarah will get her divorce, and you will pay alimony and child support. This is not up for negotiation." Alex's face reddened with rage, but before he could respond, Sarah pulled out a small recorder from her bag. With a shaking hand, she pressed the play button. The room filled with the harsh recorded voices of Miranda's abusive tirades, the sound of her cruel laughter, and the unmistakable anguish in Sarah's voice. Alex's expression shifted from anger to shock, and then to fear as the recording played on. Sarah watched as the man who had once been her husband struggled to maintain his composure, his facade of control slipping away. Jonah stood by her side, his face set in grim determination. "This is evidence of the torment I've endured," Sarah said firmly, her voice echoing with the strength she had found through her suffering. The impact of the recording was immediate and profound. Alex's defiant stance faltered, and a flicker of uncertainty crossed his face. The once familiar surroundings of the mansion now felt like a cage, each opulent detail a reminder of the power that was slipping away from them. At that moment, a new figure emerged from the shadows of the hallway. Alex's father, a tall man with a weathered face that spoke of years of quiet endurance, stepped forward. His eyes were filled with a mixture of sadness and resolve. In his hand, he held his own envelope, a matching set of divorce papers. "I'm leaving as well," Alex's father said, his voice carrying a weight of finality. "I can no longer stand by and watch this." Miranda, who had been watching from the corner of the room, her expression one of cold disdain, now looked utterly defeated. Her laughter, once sharp and mocking, turned into a cry of desperation. "You can't do this to me," she exclaimed, her voice breaking. "I'll lose everything." Jonah, his gaze unwavering, addressed Miranda with a sense of finality. "You've already lost everything that mattered. The power you wielded over Sarah and Alex is gone." As the confrontation reached its climax, Sarah's grandfather, a renowned potter known for his skill and integrity, made his own entrance. He had severed business ties with Miranda's brother, who was now on the brink of bankruptcy. The carefully crafted power dynamics that had once held Sarah and Jonah at a disadvantage had shifted dramatically. Miranda's once imposing figure now seemed small and desperate against the backdrop of the mansion's grandeur. The weight of the moment was palpable, each person in the room grappling with the shifting tides of power and control. Jonah turned to Sarah, his eyes filled with a mix of triumph and concern. "It's over," he said softly. "We've done what we came to do." Sarah, her heart still racing, felt a surge of relief mixed with lingering apprehension. The battle was far from over, but the first victory was theirs. She looked at the once imposing mansion, now feeling like a symbol of a past she was determined to leave behind. As they left the mansion, the weight of the confrontation lifted slightly from their shoulders. The future was uncertain, and the scars of their past experiences would take time to heal. But the sense of empowerment and justice was a beacon of hope. The night was clear, the cold air crisp and refreshing after the suffocating tension of the confrontation. Sarah and Jonah walked to the car, their steps lighter with the knowledge that they had taken a crucial step towards reclaiming their lives. The road ahead was still fraught with challenges, but they faced it with a renewed sense of purpose and resolve, ready to confront whatever came next. The air was crisp with the promise of spring, and the days were growing longer. At Sarah's grandparents' rural retreat, life was gradually returning to a semblance of normalcy. The once tense atmosphere had been replaced by a renewed sense of peace. The sprawling countryside, with its rolling hills and lush greenery, offered a stark contrast to the turmoil that had plagued Sarah's recent past. The house, once a refuge from the chaos of her in-law's mansion, now stood as a symbol of new beginnings. Sarah's grandfather, known for his stern demeanor and dedication to his craft, had embraced the role of a loving patriarch with a surprising gentleness. The clinking of pottery tools and the hum of the kiln were now accompanied by the soft gurgles and coos of Sarah's young son. The old man, whose eyes once only sparkled with the intensity of his work, now shone with a tenderness that came from watching his great-grandson discover the world. "Look at him, Sarah," her grandfather said one morning, his voice soft as he watched the baby crawl across the floor. "He's got your spirit. Always so curious." Sarah smiled, her heart full as she watched her son reach for a bright toy. "He seems to find joy in everything these days," she replied, her voice filled with warmth. "It's been such a relief to see him happy and thriving." Jonah, meanwhile, had thrown himself into a dual life of pottery and legal work. The rhythm of the wheel and the satisfaction of crafting beautiful pieces provided a soothing counterbalance to his legal duties. His small but dedicated law practice focused on helping those in need, and the contrast between his artistic pursuits and his legal advocacy was a source of fulfillment. One afternoon, while showcasing his pottery at an exhibition, Jonah met Clara, a warm and vivacious woman with a keen interest in the arts. Their conversation, initially focused on the intricacies of pottery, soon revealed shared passions and values. The connection was instantaneous and deep, bridging the gap between their solitary pursuits. Clara's laughter, light and genuine, seemed to fill the space around them. As Jonah spoke of his recent cases and his drive to help others, Clara's eyes sparkled with admiration. "You know," she said, her voice tinged with playfulness, "I think I'm falling in love with the man who can turn clay into art and fight for justice." Jonah, smiling, replied, "Well, I hope you're not too disappointed. The art of pottery can be messy, and legal battles aren't always glamorous." Clara's smile widened. "On the contrary, I find it incredibly inspiring. It's not just the art or the law, but the heart behind it that matters." Their relationship blossomed, a beacon of hope and joy amid the remnants of Sarah's past struggles. For the first time in a long while, Jonah found himself immersed in a romance that was both passionate and grounded, offering a much-needed respite from the emotional turmoil he had endured. However, the fallout from Miranda and Alex was starkly different. The once grand mansion had given way to a small, dingy apartment in a less desirable part of town. The move was a symbolic and literal step down, their lives now characterized by a constant struggle. The grandeur of their former lives had evaporated, replaced by a daily grind that tested their resilience and strained their relationship. The apartment was cramped, its worn furnishings and peeling wallpaper a far cry from the opulence they had once enjoyed. The small living space seemed to amplify the constant bickering between Miranda and Alex. Their conversations, once filled with calculated cruelty, were now fraught with mutual blame and frustration. "You've ruined everything," Miranda screamed one evening, her voice echoing off the thin walls of their apartment. "If you hadn't been so stubborn, we could have salvaged something." Alex, his face etched with defeat, shot back, "Me? It's your constant meddling that did us in. You pushed too hard, and now look where we are." Their attempts to find new jobs were thwarted by their tarnished reputations. Former friends and associates avoided them, and the once coveted connections they had enjoyed now seemed like distant memories. The isolation only served to deepen their despair, their days blending into a monotonous cycle of blame and regret. Back at her grandparents' house, Sarah had returned to her nursing career, finding a renewed sense of purpose in caring for her patients. The fulfillment she found in her work was a stark contrast to the turmoil of her past, and the positive impact she made in her patients' lives became a source of personal strength. The nurturing environment of her grandparents' home provided a stable foundation for her son, whose laughter and playfulness filled the house with joy. Sarah's life had transformed dramatically, and the once overwhelming shadows of her past now seemed to recede with each passing day. The juxtaposition of her peaceful new life with the chaos endured by Alex and Miranda was a bittersweet reminder of the justice she had fought so hard to achieve. One evening, as Jonah and Sarah sat on the porch, enjoying the calm of the twilight, Jonah turned to her with a thoughtful expression. "You know, Sarah, I've been thinking. All this time, we've been fighting against so much. It's nice to finally see things settling down." Sarah nodded, a soft smile on her lips. "It is. It's also a reminder of how far we've come and how important it is to keep moving forward." Jonah's gaze was steady, filled with both pride and determination. "We've faced a lot, and we've come through it stronger. I'm just glad we're finally finding some peace." As they watched the sunset together, the sky painted with hues of orange and pink, the future seemed filled with promise. The struggles of the past have forged a stronger bond between them, and the new beginnings they were embracing provided a sense of hope and renewal. With the scars of their past slowly healing, Sarah and Jonah looked forward to a future shaped by resilience, love, and the enduring strength of their family. The final chapter of Sarah's tumultuous journey was one of profound transformation and renewal. The shadows of the past have receded, making way for a future that promised peace and fulfillment. As the sun cast its gentle light over the landscape, it seemed to herald a new era for Sarah and her family. Her father-in-law, once trapped in the suffocating grasp of Miranda's influence, had found solace in a high-end care facility. The facility itself was a haven of tranquility, with well-tended gardens and a serene atmosphere that spoke of comfort and respect for its residents. Sarah and Jonah visited him frequently, their presence a source of support and warmth. The old man, now free from the toxic environment that had once clouded his life, had begun to recover both physically and emotionally. On one visit, as they sat beside him in the bright, airy room filled with the scent of fresh flowers, Sarah's father-in-law looked at them with gratitude. "I didn't think I'd ever find peace again," he said, his voice tinged with emotion. "But having you both in my life now, it's more than I could have hoped for." Sarah reached out, gently squeezing his hand. "We're here for you, and will continue to be," she said, her voice steady and full of warmth. "Your recovery is just the beginning of a new chapter." Jonah, who had been diligently balancing his roles as a potter and a lawyer, was experiencing his own transformation. His relationship with Emma, a charming woman he had met through his pottery exhibitions, had blossomed into a deep and loving partnership. Emma's easy laughter and kind demeanor had endeared her to everyone, seamlessly integrating into the family. Her presence was a breath of fresh air, and her support for Jonah's work and family endeavors strengthened their bond. One afternoon, as they all gathered for a family barbecue at Sarah's grandparents' house, Emma and Jonah were engrossed in a conversation about a new pottery design. Emma's enthusiasm was infectious as she discussed her ideas with Jonah. "What if you combine the traditional techniques with some modern elements? It could be groundbreaking," she suggested, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Jonah, his face alight with inspiration, nodded. "That's a fantastic idea. I have been experimenting with some new glazes, and your suggestion might just be the perfect complement." The barbecue itself was a celebration of the new beginnings for the entire family. Sarah's grandfather, once solely dedicated to his craft, had found renewed joy in teaching Jonah the art of pottery. The old man's gruff exterior had softened, and he now reveled in the shared experience of passing on his knowledge. The vibrant, colorful pieces that adorned the pottery studio spoke of a renewed spirit of creativity and connection. As Sarah watched her grandfather and Jonah work side by side, she felt a deep sense of contentment. The tension that had once existed between them had dissolved, replaced by a shared passion that bridged the gap between past grievances and present joys. "My grandfather is like a new man," Sarah remarked to Emma as they watched the men at work. "It's incredible to see how much joy the art has brought him." Emma smiled warmly. "It's wonderful to see how healing and creating can go hand in hand. Jonah talks about the pottery with such passion. I'm sure it's as meaningful for him as it is for your grandfather." For Sarah, Embracing her role as a nurse had become a source of immense personal fulfillment. Her work, once a job, was now a calling. The bond she formed with her patients, the care she provided, and the small victories in their recovery filled her days with purpose and joy. Her son thrived in the nurturing environment of her grandparents' home, his laughter and playful energy a constant reminder of the resilience of the human spirit. One evening, after a long day at the hospital, Sarah sat in the cozy living room, watching her son play with his toys. The warmth of the fire crackling in the hearth and the soft glow of the lamp created a sense of peaceful contentment. Jonah joined her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "It's amazing how far we've come," he said quietly. "All the struggles and pain have led us here, to this moment of peace." Sarah nodded, her eyes reflecting the glow of the fire. "It is, and I feel like we're finally where we're meant to be. The darkness of the past has made the light of today even more beautiful." The finalization of Sarah's divorce was a symbolic closure, a decisive end to the chapters of her life marked by pain and betrayal. As she signed the last of the divorce papers, she felt a profound sense of liberation. Alex's attempts to reconcile had been met with indifference. Sarah had moved on, and so had her family. The weight that had burdened her shoulders for so long was finally lifted. The future, once clouded by uncertainty and fear, now appeared bright and full of promise. The bonds of love and family had emerged stronger from the trials they had faced. The journey that had begun with struggle and adversity had led to a place of hope and renewal. As Sarah and her family stood together, their lives intertwined with resilience and triumph, they were ready to face whatever the future held. The challenges of the past have forged a stronger, more united family, and the love and support they shared would guide them through the new beginnings that lay ahead. The story of their journey, once marked by pain, had transformed into one of enduring strength and hope, a testament to the unbreakable bonds of family and the power of new beginnings.